Let's get started. Welcome everybody to our Q&A session with Dr. Colleen Begg and Niassa Lion Project. My name is Joyce Wang and I am the Director of Conservation Partnerships here at the Wildlife Conservation Network. And I'll be moderating today's session with Colleen. This is your chance to get to know Colleen and learn a little bit about her work. You'll be able to participate directly by joining us live on screen to ask questions. You can click on the orange request permission button at the top right if you'd like to join us live on camera. We'll let in 3 or 4 people at a time. If you don't want to ask your question live on camera, you can also type it into the chat box on the right, and we'll ask Colleen your question for you. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. One last tip is that you can make Colleen's image larger by double-clicking on her image. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy the conversation.
Thank you, Joyce.
So just by, Colleen, I'm going to introduce you just by way of intro so everyone knows who you are. Dr. Colleen Begg is the founder of Niassa Lion Project in Mozambique. She has over 25 years of field conservation experience, including work with honey badgers, cheetah, African wild dogs, and of course, lions. She's a well-published scientist and photographer whose articles and images have been published by National Geographic and Africa Geographic. During the 90s, Colleen worked in Galagadi Transfrontier National Park in South Africa studying honey badgers. In 2003, she founded the Niassa Lion Project, and since that time, she's lived with her family in one of the world's last remaining great wilderness areas and strongholds for lions, leading a diverse team of over 100 Mozambicans in the Niassa National Reserve. Their work includes wildlife monitoring, snare removal, microenterprises, including beekeeping and tourism, anti-poaching, and education. Building trust and relationships with local communities through these grassroots efforts is a key part of Niassa Lion Project's conservation strategy to help people and lions live together and thrive. The impacts of these programs lead to the protection of more than 1,000 lions and other large carnivores in the Niassa National Reserve. She also works in close collaboration with the Mozambican government and many conservation partners to align efforts across national and regional strategies to protect carnivores. Colleen received her PhD from the Mammal Research Institute in South Africa and is a member of the African Lion Working Group and the IUCN Cat Specialist Group. She's a recipient of the Rufford Innovation Award and was selected to participate in Homeward Bound, an international scientific leadership initiative aimed to heighten the influence of women in science, set against the backdrop of Antarctica. 9 months of each year, she lives in a tent with her husband and 2 children and many of the Niassa Lion Project team in the Niassa National Reserve in Mozambique. Thank you, Colleen, for joining us today. We're so honored to have you with us. And I'll give you a minute to say hello and tell people a little bit about your program since we have so many new people today. And then I will start letting people into the chat room to ask you some questions.
Thank you, Joyce. It's so exciting to be with you on this new format. It's a little bit odd, but I get just as nervous. I'm speaking to you from South Africa because Keith and I and the kids are actually in full lockdown in South Africa. We can't move. The borders are closed, but our entire Mozambican team is on the ground in Niassa and still working very hard. It's been tough, as I'm sure you all have found these last few months. I don't lead very well from the back. I like to be in the field, so I'm having to learn new skills, and I'm learning to have to facilitate meetings on Zoom and Skype and all sorts of new things that we have to learn. So we've been working in Mozambique in collaboration with the Mozambican government this is our 19th year, since 2002 was the first year we went there, and started in 2003. And Niassa Reserve lies in northern Mozambique. It's 16,000 square miles. It's one of the most significant protected areas left in Africa today, and it protects about 800 to 1,000 lions. And we are a community-based program. We work really hard to include the 60,000 people who live inside Niassa in conservation. And these are challenging times, and this is not the moment for us to abandon the communities with which we work. And so all our alternative livelihoods programs and our education programs continue, but in a different format under these new challenges of the pandemic. And I just wanted to, before I answer some of your questions, I just wanted to say that I hope you're all well and safe and that there is this very strong sense of community, even though we are perhaps even further apart than we've ever been. So it's lovely to be here, and thank you, WCN, for this incredible opportunity.
Thanks, Colleen. All right, let the adventure begin. Tim Koppelman, I'll be letting you into the room.
I see so many friendly faces on the chat, and it's kind of tempting to answer everyone, but I'll get to it a bit later. And it's lovely to see some familiar people, as well as welcome all the new faces to this event. Hopefully I'll see you in person one day.
So for those of you that are waiting in the queue to be let in, when I let you into the room, you will see a pop-up button that says share your audio and video, and you will have to approve that, and then you will be let into the room.
So I see one of the questions from Rachel there was, what is the largest challenge to the communities at the moment? I can just answer that while we wait for the others to come in the room. And the challenge right now is actually getting the message about the COVID pandemic out to the communities, and dealing with the food insecurity that's likely to affect them, and managing to keep people employed at the moment, because there's so little tourism and local economy is going to crash. So that's one of our biggest challenges at the moment.
Thanks, Cole. So I see that we have Lance Williams in the room with us. Lance, can you see and hear us?
Hear but not see. I don't know why, but.
Great. Hi, it's good to hear your voice. Welcome.
Yes, it is. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you have a question you'd like to ask Colleen?
How are you? How are you holding up?
Yeah, it's challenging, as I'm sure it is for everyone. Our team is amazing. They've just done this incredible COVID awareness campaign, where we reached more than 5,000 people, but individually, by walking to household, putting up tippy taps, teaching people about hygiene and washing hands, trying to get a whole lot of materials into the hospital, which is a very remote hospital that reaches about 20,000 people, and including our Lion scholars and our guardians and the district health and the reserve. It was an incredible example of solidarity that really gave me hope. So yeah, we're all doing fine, as I'm sure it's difficult for you as well. The difficulty is not knowing when this ends or where it's going, because Africa is so far behind the curve here.
Thanks, Cole. I'm adding folks in the room, but it doesn't look like they're joining. Just another reminder to folks, when you're approved to enter the screen, you'll see a pop-up window to allow access to your audio and video. Click on that and you should be popped right into the room. So Cole, while we wait for people, I'm curious if you can tell us how COVID-19 has impacted any of your activities, or your programs, or your team.
So it has. I mean, one of the major impacts has been a decrease in our funding. So I think that's across the board for conservation organizations. And also because obviously we've just opened, well, for those who don't know, we've just opened a community tourism camp last year. And because there's no tourism, and that money will not go into the communities. We've also had to adapt our education programs because we can't have groups. And we're trying to limit the travel. So we've gone through our budget quite ruthlessly and our work plan. At this point, we're just looking 3 months at a time in advance, because we don't really know when the state of emergency in Mozambique will be lifted. Most of our education is now done one-on-one by visiting people in their homes rather than bringing people to our environmental center. But our anti-poaching work continues. Our scouts are all out there. Basically, conservation is an essential service. And I think that's something that I've really learned, is that it's not a luxury activity. It's an essential service that continues. And conservation organizations are often the heart and the soul of the areas in which they work and have a lot of privilege. So we have a lot of logistical experience, we have internet, we have vehicles. And so we can be the first responders for the pandemic and help the health in the district. And we can also continue with all our programs because this is not the moment to abandon the communities with which we work. But it is challenging trying to find that balance and keeping everybody safe.
Yeah, I can imagine. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you. You're welcome to ask a question to Colleen if you'd like.
Hello, Cheryl.
Hi.
Would you like to ask Colleen a question about her work or Niassa Lion Project?
How is the weather been down there?
It's still the rainy season, so we're just coming out of the rainy season, which is why I wasn't in the reserve when the pandemic actually hit, because we normally leave for a few months in the rainy season to buy equipment and to get things done, and then got caught out. But moving into May, the rivers will get a little flow a little less strongly. It'll be easier to move around. And then we'll go into the very long dry season when we do most of our work. We have all our alternative livelihoods programs out at the moment. So all the beehives are out. We're still collecting honey and selling it with the communities. We still have our small livestock breeding programs as well. So it's a wonderful time of year in Niassa. I wish I could show you how beautifully green it is. All the elephants, we've got warthogs in our camp. It's a really wonderful time of year.
What would a visit to your camp be like? Or when would you recommend that someone come to visit?
So first of all, it would have to be next year, I think. I mean, I don't see us being able to open this year. But we have a very simple camp, which is all built of grass on decks on a beautiful island called Mpopo Trails Camp. And we have opened it in partnership with a village of 2,000 people. So it's an eco lodge. It is comfortable. It has local food, but done really well. And you can go on canoeing in the river. You can go walking safaris. You can go out to see all the animals that are there and visit all our community programs. It was very successfully received last year. We usually do week-long trips with 8 people at a time, generally people who know each other and like each other, and you become very much part of our community. And so we do hope you come and visit. It's been a little bit disappointing to have to close it. And from our craft groups to the women who collect the grass to make the camp every year, to our team who work there, they were so excited, and this kind of came from behind. And so we'll just have to wait and see.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's so good to see you. So Colleen, I'm going to send you a few questions from our chat now. We've got a question from Crystal Puga who says, "Hi, Col. I work for a company trying to develop technology for conservation efforts. What technology needs would help your lion conservation efforts?"
You know, that's a very difficult question. We get asked it quite a lot. To be honest, and I think people who know me know that that's probably my worst flaw, but is that at the moment we need to hire local people and keep it as, in many respects, as untechnological as it possibly can be, because we need to create as much employment as possible. And I'll just give you a very simple example of that before I answer your question more specifically. For example, we open roads every year. We don't have a grader. We open all the roads by hand and employ 256 local people every year to open roads. And we do that on purpose to provide a local economy, because that is the only way we can get people off illegal activities. In terms of actual technology, obviously we use satellite radio collars on our lions. It would be great if we had better satellite email, and satellite technology is very expensive for us to be able to get onto the internet and be able to run some of the programs to have real-time access to our scouts and our vehicles and the lions, and to see what's going on. There has been some talk of using drones, but it has been very technologically challenging because we're so far away. So when things break with technology, it's almost impossible for us to get them fixed. So I would say that at the moment, we do use technology, but there's not anything major that we need right now. What we need is to just keep employing people and keep them involved in conservation.
Thanks, Cole. We've got another question from the chat from Linda Valley. She wants to know if schools are closed in the Niassa area, she assumes there are not many homeschooling options.
Yes, so I homeschool our kids, but they're at home with me in South Africa, and we're just continuing as normal. But all the schools in Mozambique are closed at present. There's a state of emergency. And in fact, we have 44 scholars that are on scholarship called Lion Scholars. And just before it went into state of emergency, we actually had to pull them out of all 11 institutions where they were. It's tricky because they've got no access to internet. It's very hard for them to access any kind of schooling under this kind of situation. We've been involving the secondary school scholars in our COVID awareness campaign, and they have been extraordinary. They have really stepped up, and I'm very, very proud of them. I think it's unlikely the schools will remain closed for many more months, simply because there's no other way for the children to get an education. And there's a real risk of an increase in poaching, not only because of the pandemic, but because of the way the economy is going in Mozambique. And so the lack of schooling, the food security, insecurity is increasing, then people will go poaching because there's not much else to keep them occupied. And we can't hold classes ourselves because we're not allowed to have people in groups. So, it's, we could go and teach literacy, but that's almost impossible for us to do because we're not allowed to have groups of more than 10 people, 5 or 10 people.
Thanks, Cole. We have another question from Jenna Brager. Colleen, can you talk a bit more about your beekeeping program?
Yes, so I think many of you saw the STE presentation by Frank a little earlier. I missed some of it, but I'm sure they spoke about the beekeeping program. Lucy King from Save the Elephants came to help us set up beehives to prevent elephant crop raids several years ago. Since then, we have some villages that use the beehives as an elephant fence, and some beehives are in woodland to prevent people from converting them into fields, because habitat conversion is one of the major threats to wildlife. Each hive is individually owned, and we buy the honey from the beekeepers and sell it under an elephant-friendly label, and 100% of the money goes back to the person whose hive it was. And we have, about 300 hives out there at the moment. It's a growing program in 3 different villages. And it is a wonderful program in Miamba Woodland because it provides a sustainable income for people.
Thanks, Colleen. Got a question from Linda Tabor Beck. So good to see you, Linda. She asks, do you anticipate being able to run your camp when the wet season ends?
Yes, our whole team is in the camp. So the only people that aren't there are actually Keith and I, who are the only South Africans, and we got caught out. But Agostino is there, Thomas, our operations manager is there, and Andrew, our education manager, are there, as well as our entire team. Eusebio and Samuel are out there looking for the lions, making sure they're okay. All 38 of our anti-poaching scouts are still patrolling. And we are figuring out ways to do awareness and education in a way that doesn't go against the state of emergency. There's always a lot to keep us busy, and we have, for example, we have community wildlife guardians in 44 villages across Niassa that are just communicating by WhatsApp, and they keep helping their villagers protect their livestock and keeping the conflict under control. So everything's going on as normal. It's just me that's battling to to be in civilization and not in the bush, but our team is very capable.
Thanks, Col. One question from Joni Overbosch. Will there be a new season of Snapshot Mariri? I look forward to joining again. And can you also tell us what Snapshot Mariri is for people who don't know?
Yes, so Snapshot Mariri is, well, Snapshot Safari is where many places, protected areas in Africa, have camera traps out there, and the camera trapping data is analyzed by citizen scientists like the people who are watching this Q&A, and they help us deal with the data and analyze the animals that they see on the pictures. And this helps us monitor the carnivore populations, the lion populations, as well as their prey. We have a bit of a backlog with some of the data. I do hope to get back to Snapshot Mariri at the moment, but we're still working through, I think, the 2017 data, and we still got 2018. 2019, we didn't do it, but I do hope to get back to it. This year, we've had to reduce our budget, so I'm not buying any camera traps, and a lot of them got destroyed by hyenas last year. But Joni, I do hope we'll get back to it, and I'll let you know when we do. Just keep watching our Facebook page.
Thanks, Cole. One question from Deb Edson. Are the communities still meeting, and are the communities still being paid for meeting their quotas against poaching?
Yes, so our agreement with Mbamba Village is still in force. They get performance payments for every month that goes by when elephants don't die and when carnivores don't die in snares, and they get money taken off when snares are removed, or when a lion or a leopard or a hyena gets killed. They are still getting their performance payments. They will decrease the money they earn this year because the community tourism camp won't be open, which is unfortunate because they get a bed night levy from their work to protect the area where we have the community tourism camp. But we're looking for other ways to be able to help them with income. But we're in this together, and through thick and thin. And one of the things I really wanted to say was there's been some talk. People said to us, well, you need to reduce your budget, you need to stop employing people, you need to reduce your amount of your staff. But this is not the moment to do this. We're a community program. This is what we do, and you don't abandon communities when they need us the most. So we're doing everything in our power to make sure all our livelihoods programs, all our performance payments, and all our salaries for all our staff continue. And so when we cut salaries, we start from ours, and we will hopefully never have to get down to the local level, because that's what keeps people going, and that's the benefit that conservation brings.
Thank you, Colleen, for that leadership. We have another question from Lauren Noakes, who says, what advice would you give to a lion conservation amateur, the best ways to get into a career? I am so passionate about lion conservation, but it seems so unreachable.
It does, and I know that we all felt like that, so thank you for your passion for lions. I think that advice that I always give people is that don't wait for someone to offer an opportunity. Use what you're good at and go and do it. So just as an example, so Keith and I didn't wait for someone to invite us to Niassa Reserve. We went there and started a program with our own funds, and once we had some data, it kind of went from there, once we had some results. But even if you're not a biologist, conservation isn't about biology, it's about everything else. It's about economics and graphic design and awareness and politics, and there's so many ways that you could contribute to lion conservation that doesn't require you to actually be working with lions on the ground. And those positions of working with lions are actually, and should be, taken by the people who live with the lions. And so even though we get many requests from people to come and work with the lions, that job belongs to Eusebio and Samuel, who from Mbamba Village, and who actually work with the lions in their own area. But there are other ways for people to contribute.
Thanks, Colleen. Lawrence Kruger wants to ask, artisanal mining is becoming a big issue in many protected areas, and I see it's also a big issue in Niassa. How best can this be managed?
Yes, so we have artisanal gold mining as well as mining for rubies. So this is a livelihood issue. So my feeling is that you don't solve it by law enforcement. That is part of the way that you control it. You solve it by providing alternative livelihoods, because people are going mining because they want income to be able to find food to put on the table. This is not something where people are getting enormously rich. It's the same as it's the same as any illegal activity, is that people are doing it because they have very few alternatives. So the way we solve it is by providing legal, conservation-friendly alternatives.
Thanks, Colleen. Linda Valley would like to know, is there testing for COVID-19 available in Mozambique and in your region specifically?
So there is some testing for COVID-19 in Mozambique, not a lot, and most of it's been done in Maputo and Cabo Delgado, Pemba. I think at present they have 70 cases, no deaths yet. But the testing hasn't been very extensive. There has been no testing where we are, and I would think it is unlikely. There's also no opportunity for there to be a lockdown because people need to be able to leave their homes to collect water, to be able to go to the market, because they're living from day to day. So our best options at this point are for villages to isolate so that there's less traveling between the villages, and for just better hygiene, just washing hands and sort of some sort of social distancing to a small extent. But it's scary. I actually can't, I sometimes feel like I can't breathe when I think about what might happen in the future, even in South Africa, because there's also, there are only, I think, 33 ventilators in the whole of Mozambique. The good thing is the population is very young. 70% of the population is, under 40, and they're healthy. Particularly in Niassa, and so I hope that we won't see the devastation that we've seen elsewhere, but it's impossible to predict at this point.
Mm-hmm. Jenna Sugar would like to know, what procedures have been most successful in mitigating human-lion conflict? Is there a certain time of the year where human-lion conflict occurs at a higher rate?
So we're very lucky in Niassa because there are no cattle, and unlike East Africa, where conflict between lions and cattle is one of their major sources of mortality because of retaliatory killing, we only have goats in Niassa. So right away that makes it simpler for us. But we also did a lot of work right in the beginning years of our project to look at what behaviors made people vulnerable. It was walking at night, protecting your fields at night, children walking alone, people who were drunk that looked like they were ill, and sleeping on the ground in the open in their fields. And so we've been able to take all that information and then create a way, create safe behaviors. So we work very hard with people to suggest, which they know how to do, a lot of the elders know it, is to sleep on decks in their fields, which protects them, to corral their goats. And so those are the most successful measures. Basically, protect yourself, take responsibility for yourself and for your small livestock, and don't behave in a way that makes you a target. And we've actually had nobody killed in Niassa by a lion since 2012, and nobody injured by a lion in the last 3 years, and only, I think it was 4 or 6 goats taken last year. So our major problem at the moment is hyenas, but not lions, and we're very happy to see that conflict is not a major problem.
That's phenomenal, Colleen. Congratulations on the success. Such a testament to the impact of your program. We've got a question.
Yeah, it's actually a testament. Sorry. So it's actually a testament to the lion guardians. So we have these community wildlife guardians that are out there in the fields, and they work really hard with their communities to help them whenever there's an issue. And so they're an amazing group of men and women, and all local citizen scientists, and they're working very hard. We're very proud of them.
Just a few more questions. From Susan Young, how might the income drop from tourism change the way conservationists develop community programs even into the future?
Yeah, it's very difficult to predict. I think that the one thing that it's teaching all of us is that we need diversity in our income streams, that it is a very dangerous situation to have it all linked to tourism. And I know that this is an extraordinary time. There's never been a time where all tourism markets have dropped at exactly the same moment. But I think it is a lesson that we need to find ways to fund conservation that don't rely on tourism. It pays, if it pays, it stays. I'm not a believer in that. I think that we need multiple models. I think it's also really time to acknowledge as a global community that conservation is not a privilege. It's an essential service, and so it has to continue, and it is continuing whether we have pandemics or climate change or lack of funding, and that's the key to this all. I think there are major risks right now of poaching increasing because of the drop in funding from tourism across the whole of Africa.
Super. Thanks, Colleen. And this will be our last question for today. From Joni Overbosch, is there anything people can do to help other than financial aid?
Yeah, obviously financial aid is important, and I know that sounds very hardcore, but that is the truth. But there are many ways that people help us. You know, we have people designing T-shirts for us, designing environmental education materials. We have, I saw her online, Lizette, who helps us with oversight of our financial management and financial report every year, and she's been indispensable. We're biologists, so she's taught us and our accountants everything that they know. So again, it comes back to what are you good at? Because I can promise you that conservation needs whatever you're good at in whatever level, even if it's just bringing someone else to a virtual expo or a real expo that doesn't show any interest in wildlife. That all helps, because we have to make this something that we don't just reach the converted, that we reach the people who don't believe in conservation.
Absolutely. Colleen, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your insight with us. You are such an inspiration, and on behalf of the 159 people in this room and everyone, thank you so much for the amazing work that you are doing in the Niassa National Reserve for all the carnivores out there. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
And thank you, Joyce. And I just wanted to say thank you from our whole team. You know, I know they wish they could be there, and thank you. And I'm just really the spokesperson of the people that are working really hard on the ground. So thank you so much for all your support, especially to you, WCN. We very much appreciate it.
We're honored to support you, Col. So we'll have a 15-minute break now, everyone, and please join us back on the main stage in 15 minutes, quarter past the hour, for our COVID-19 panel. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.